This is Kimberly Fletcher with the Moms March movement to give you an update on the Kavanaugh confirmation. As many of you know, we spent the last week in Washington, D.C., and were able to see the hearings firsthand. But I have to tell you that what we saw last week was kind of incredible and, well, just downright crazy. If you watched the entire hearings like I did, then you were probably as surprised as I was when you saw the news the day after. So I came home for the weekend, and as I was getting off the plane, I jumped right on to get the stories of, what is going on with the Kavanaugh hearing. So the first article that popped up was from CNN. Well, I thought I'd give them a shot. So it starts out. The Senate hearing meant to find the truth about Christine Blasey Ford's accusation that President Donald Trump's nominee assaulted her in the 1990s, denigrated into the most distasteful political spectacles in many years. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking CNN's got it right. That's exactly what it was. And they continue. But it is a national tragedy that the confirmation process has exposed a ruptured political system, utterly unable to find consensus over an issue as serious as an alleged sexual assault, even in the Me Too era. Well, now we're taking another turn. Instead of showing how far Washington has come in understanding the quintessential challenges of an experience many women know but few talk about, Thursday's showdown showed how far it has to go. Oh my gosh. What started out as, it was a horrible debacle, an absolute massacre, a complete injustice. And then it jumps right into, it's all about how we didn't believe Ms. Ford and how she was so believable and so credible and so compelling. And then Judge Kavanaugh comes out and explodes, and he's angry and he's unfit because his temper showed, so we could totally see how he could be someone who would assault a woman. I'm like, are you kidding me? Here's a guy who's literally fighting for his life. I mean, talk about the passion. When that man came out and spoke, it was compelling beyond compelling. And my heart totally went out to him. And I could not believe what he and his family has been put through. And sitting in the basement of the Dirksen Senate office building, I can tell you that when Brett Kavanaugh finished his statement, he got a standing ovation. I mean, the whole place exploded. Well, except, of course, for the group of Antifa feminists who were on the other side of the room. Very unhappy. It's important to understand what's going on here is an orchestrated effort to keep a good constitutionalist judge from serving on the Supreme Court. That is all that this is about. And obstructionist senators will go to any lengths to keep Judge Kavanaugh or anyone like him from being appointed to the bench, including using a woman in her personal story and putting her on national television in the worst possible way for the sole purpose of destroying a man's life. They don't care who they hurt or who they step on as long as they get what they want. So I think it's important to share some of the experiences that we had while we were in Washington, D.C., things that I saw myself. Like the groups of women who were going from Senate office to Senate office wearing Believe Women t-shirts, as if we're supposed to believe all women all the time. I mean, I'm a woman, and I know that women lie for whatever reason, but we do. To think that all women tell the truth and all men lie and all women are good and all men are bad, I mean, that's just crazy. But that's what's being created. I walked onto an elevator in the Capitol building. I got on the elevator, a man came in after me, and just as the doors were closing, he turned and saw that I was standing there, and then he moved all the way over to the corner of the elevator. This is what this is doing. It's creating a horrible distrust between men and women. And what Cory Booker and Dianne Feinstein and those other Democrat senators did was absolutely atrocious. It's not at all what I was understanding was going to happen. When I spoke with Senator Grassley's office, I was under the impression and understanding that the woman who was hired to ask the questions would be the only one asking the questions. But that's not what happened. What happened was political grandstanding and bloviating by the Democrats, while the Republicans were completely impotent and muted. Every 5 minutes, the prosecutor was able to ask some questions, and then it would go right over to the Democrats, where they would say, "Oh, you courageous woman, we're so grateful that you came here, and we believe you." And over again, "We believe you." And okay, great. And then before you even heard Judge Kavanaugh, before you even looked at the hundreds of papers that you kept introducing, and then Judge Kavanaugh comes in, and they become ravening dogs, vicious beasts, attacking him. And really? Why would he not be upset? Why would he not come to stand up and say, "No, this is an incredible injustice"? Who wouldn't? His testimony was inspiring. And I have to say that all through his statement, I was sure he was going to get to that point where he was going to say that I'm out. I'm not going to put my family through this. And he didn't. For whatever reason, he stood courageously and he said, "You're not going to push me out. You're not going to make me stop. I'm going to continue on." What an incredible fighter, a courageous man to stand up, and his family and friends to stand with him. Please understand, this isn't about a he said, she said. This is about a woman said, and all the people that she said were there are saying it didn't happen, or they weren't there. They have no knowledge of this ever happening. There is no substantiation or corroboration. And without that, it's just a great story. And I don't doubt that Ms. Ford had some kind of pain happen in her life. But it has nothing to do with Brett Kavanaugh. And those who are parading around Washington, D.C. and cornering senators like Jeff Flake and propelling their pain onto the senators who are on the Judiciary Committee and on Brett Kavanaugh, this has nothing to do with him. If those women who were hurt and violated or victimized, that, I'm sorry, go after the person that hurt you. File a police report. Throw the book at him. But Brett Kavanaugh has absolutely nothing to do with your pain. But here, ladies, is what it comes down to. Let me read you some of the things that I've been reading. From the very beginning, it was decided that any judge that the president put forth would not be supported. That the Democrats were going to do whatever it took to make sure that anyone that he put forward did not get confirmed. What they're hoping for is that this will be terminated. I heard it over and over and over again while I was in Washington, D.C. Delay to terminate, cancel Kavanaugh. They want him gone. And the goal is to push this off until after the election, because they are going to do everything they can. They'll walk on glass to go to the polls and make sure that they vote against Donald Trump, because they cannot stand what he's doing. They can't stand that he's fighting for truth and freedom and liberty. They can't stand that he's putting constitutional judges on the bench. But you know what? That precedence was already set. The vote that was already made when we elected him. It was because he didn't just say, "I'm going to appoint constitutional judges to the bench." He gave a list and said, "These are the judges I'm going to choose from." I mean, that's one of the main reasons people voted for him. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him in the primary, and I didn't vote for him in the general election. I wrote in Ted Cruz. But as I see what this man has done, I'm completely blown away. What he has done to promote freedom, to reduce regulations, to reduce the tax burden on families, to put good constitutional judges at all levels of government. I didn't vote for him in 2016, but I'm skipping to the polls in 2020 to vote for him. And there are a lot of women who are saying the same thing, especially after what we just saw in Washington, D.C., when members of Congress who raised their hand to swear an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, have now become the domestic enemies that they were sworn to defend us against. This is a debacle, and it's being orchestrated and spurred on by radical feminists. You saw them last year at the Women's March. For decades, these women have been pushing their radical agendas behind closed doors and in secrecy in our school classrooms, in our children's school books, and all levels of society without us knowing. And for the first time last January at the Women's March, they finally came out from their secrecy and showed us all who they really are. Those women are the ones who are flooding the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C., going from Senate office to Senate office with their Believe Women t-shirts and saying, support women and allow women to have their voice and don't allow the victimization of women. Okay, great. I'm all there. This has nothing to do with that. But here's what these women have been saying. From the Women's March email list, of which I am on, the Women's March, they said, whose mission is to harness the political power of diverse women. I really would like to believe that, but they don't believe me. This whole believe all women, they don't want to believe me. I had numerous conversations with them, and they didn't want to listen to anything I had to say. But they said, before Donald Trump even announced who his nomination was going to be, they put out an email that said, in response to Donald Trump's nomination of XX to the Supreme Court, the Women's March released the following statement. It didn't matter who it was. They were going to vote against him. And they said that later. They said, we already know it will be someone with the stated opposition to abortion. That's what this is coming down to. They said, Trump's announcement today is a death sentence for thousands of women in the United States. I find this incredibly ironic and ridiculous that they say that Judge Kavanaugh, confirming Judge Kavanaugh to the bench is going to be a death sentence for thousands of women in the United States, when the whole reason they're saying this is because they want to be able to kill thousands of women in the United States, and in the name of women's rights. They go on. They have started a We Believe, put hands on their hands. They were going around all over Washington saying, we believe, I believe Christine Blasey Ford, before they'd even heard her. And they had signs, we believe Christine Blasey Ford. You just have to believe her. It doesn't matter what she's going to say. We have to believe her. And then they said, when the hearing started, they started sending out these emails. They're fundraising on all this. They started sending out these emails and they said, we're organizing a high-impact direct action to stop Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court. And that's exactly what they did. They said hundreds of women have already committed to putting their bodies on the line to try and cause confusion and disturbance and unsettle the senators. And they even said that too. They said, we sent our senators a clear message this week. Vote against Kavanaugh or we'll vote against you. Now, just 59 days before the election, we're gearing up to follow through on that promise. We're going all in and getting out women's votes for the midterm elections. And they go all on about this. Okay, they're going to stop Kavanaugh. And now they're like, we got to get out and we got to vote so that we can keep our power, so that we can keep our supposed right to kill our children. And then they said, if you were inspired by the courageous women who took action this week to stop Trump from making a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court, if you were inspired by this woman's mom who put her body on the line to defend our reproductive rights, then join us over the next 2 months as we bring our power to the polls. That's what it's all about, ladies. And if you think your vote doesn't matter, I'm telling you it does. Because there's 10 of these women for every one of us. And if every one of us is not registered to vote and going out and voting our values on Election Day, these women who are terrorizing our country and holding hostage the whole entire Supreme Court and the Judiciary Committee and America, they will be the ones that are in charge, that are leading the country. That's what they're saying. Then after the hearings finished and they'd done all their chaos, then they sent out another email 2 weeks ago. We still have a chance to stop Kavanaugh and stop the assault on women. Because of us, our nation will not become the playground of a white supremacist dictator. Apparently, Donald Trump, they say, is a white supremacist dictator. Now, I don't always agree with the man, but I certainly don't agree with this. Then, a few days later, they released this. They told us that the Kavanaugh confirmation was a done deal. They thought we wouldn't pay attention, that we wouldn't stand up for our future, but we did. Over the past few weeks, over 4,500 of you supported hundreds of our sisters to go to Washington, D.C. to put our bodies on the line and stop Kavanaugh's appointment. And it's working. And let me tell you, ladies, it is working. Those women who confronted Jeff Flake in the elevator, they were put there. They were plants. Maybe they do have a story. Maybe they were assaulted. But they were there because they wanted to crush a man and convince him to delay the vote because they didn't want to take it to the floor. They did not want it to get to the floor. They want to stop the process. Again, it's delay and terminate. Then they said this. We've made sure that the Senate hasn't had a moment of peace since they started the confirmation process for Brett Kavanaugh. They haven't had a moment of peace. Is that who we are? And then they said, donate $10 to help us keep doing it. Every one of these emails, donate $10 and help us keep doing it. To cancel Kavanaugh, they said, we have to be relentless. And then they said, we're showing the men in power that if they continue to ignore women's voices, women will disobey. We have to keep showing up in numbers too great to dismiss. We have to keep showing up too frequently to forget. We have to keep showing up too loudly to silence. We can't keep going without you, they say. So send us more money. And they are. They're getting millions of dollars, $10 at a time. After the information about Miss Blasey Ford was released, they sent out this email. Women have a real shot to keep another abuser from joining the Supreme Court. Just believe women. Somebody said it, so let's believe it. We've called our senators, we've disrupted hearings, we've risked arrest, but we aren't done. No, they aren't. And just today, I got this email. It's been a hard week. Watching rape culture play out on a national stage has re-traumatized women and survivors nationwide. But in response, we've turned our pain into power. We have taken a SCOTUS confirmation that was all but certain and turned it into a fight we actually have a chance at winning. Women are outraged, we are organized, and we are ready to march. The one thing I agree with this are the last 3 lines. Women are outraged, we are organizing, and we are ready to march. But right now, the most important thing is our march. Our march for America right now to make sure that this travesty does not go forth. They say that they have a real chance of winning. They disrupted it. They've caused chaos. They've bombarded the phone lines. They've gone to offices wearing their Believe Women t-shirts and shouting out, I've been victimized. This man cannot be put on the bench because I've been victimized. Well, let me tell you something. I was victimized. I was molested as a child. But I decided that I was not going to allow the person who hurt me to enslave me for the rest of my life. I was victimized, but I am not a victim because being a victim is a choice. And I will be a victor and a survivor, and that is what I am. And I'm not going to dwell on this for the next 20, 30, or 40 years. I moved on. And I'm telling you right now that Brett Kavanaugh did nothing to hurt me. He did nothing to hurt any woman who has been violated or victimized because he is not the person who did it. All these radical feminists are doing is deflecting their pain onto a man for the sole purpose of keeping him from serving in the United States Supreme Court because he is a constitutionalist judge, and they can't handle constitutionalist judges because they know that Roe v. Wade is unconstitutional. And I can tell you that when I was talking to the Antifa radical feminist protesters, in the Dirksen Senate office building. They said that very thing. They also said women aren't in the Constitution. But you know what? We are. We didn't even need the 19th Amendment. We already had the right to vote. But because of English, European traditions, there were people who had to have it pushed a little bit harder. But there's no place in the Constitution where it says only men. Women are there. The Constitution of the United States protects the divine inherent rights of mothers, children, all people, all of us. We need to have a constitutionalist judge on the bench so that we can defend and protect the Constitution, which protects us. So ladies, I'm going to urge you to do 3 things. 1, if you haven't registered to vote, God help us. Please register to vote and go out and vote on Election Day. 2nd, if you haven't called your senator's office, please do so. And let me tell you some senators that you really need to call. And they're going to be right below this video listed. Senator Corker, Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski. That's a really big one. Senator Manchin, and please call Senator Flake and tell him that there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And we're sorry that we weren't there when he was cornered, but we're going to make sure that we're do everything that we can to be there the next time and have their back. Please tell them to stand their ground and we will have their back. And lastly, I'm going to ask you for $10 because I can't fight this alone. I mean, Christine Blasey Ford started a GoFundMe page and she's raised over $1 million for coming and putting her story out there and sharing her pain with the world, something I never would, in a million years, you couldn't pay me enough money to do. We're going to Washington. We're going back and we're going to talk to these senators. We're going to hold a press conference. We're going to do everything that we can so that we can be heard. But we can't do it without you because those plane tickets cost money and we got to stay somewhere. And it's dang expensive to stay in Washington, D.C. So if you would please consider 10, 15, 25. If you can spare 100, that's fantastic. But even if all you can do is $10, it will help us to have a voice. If you can't be there in person, you can be there in spirit by helping us get there. Make those phone calls. Register to vote. And please go out and vote your values on Election Day. And make sure that these people who are trying to destroy our country, to attack our men, our sons, our families, that they are stopped. We have the power to do it. We absolutely do. It is our voice, our values, our vote. Thank you so much for all your support. And let's keep fighting the good fight together.